CosmicRadio.TV. Hello and welcome to the fine edition of my so-called 8-Bit Life. I'm your host, Roberto Villegas. Joining me today...
Oh my God!
Rick Foster and Drew Snyder. How's it going, both you two? You thought you got me.
That voice was.
You thought you got me. It is on the... I will say this. Your thing is on the audio recording of this podcast. It is not on the video live stream thing. The greatest part about that is we split the channels so we can cut that shit out. We can cut that shit out, Daryl. We can cut that first one out until he says his second, oh my God, because that's the only one that matters. How's it going, both you guys?
I still have no idea what's going on.
Oh wait, I was supposed to.
I don't even know if the show started or not.
Oh, it started. We're live. We're officially going. We're going strong. We are in this because it is. We have one more day left as of this recording, but we are completely done with all the E3 conferences, and I figured because we're so good on all this stuff like that and everything else. I figured, why don't we today, between you, Drew, Rick, and I?
What about tomorrow?
Tomorrow we can wait till tomorrow will be the last day, but you know that's the day when everyone's like leaving. It's like an indie convention. Everyone's flying out home.
There's gonna be a bunch of huge announcements tomorrow.
God, what do you think is gonna be announced tomorrow, Drew?
What's gonna happen tomorrow is the only thing I'm gonna care about is the fact that there's going to be 3 drunk people on Giant Bomb's couch, and there might be phone numbers dispersed on Twitter because that happened before. So that's all I care about.
That's great.
Calling Dave Lang up in the middle of the night.
No, honestly, it's so funny because this year has been weird in that this year probably had way more pre-E3 stuff than last year. Like, in other words, we had Microsoft's conference on... Like E3 didn't begin technically till yesterday. Like yesterday was day 1.
That's true.
And we had Microsoft's conference on Saturday, right?
No, it was EA's conference.
EA's we had on Saturday. We had Microsoft's
Sunday night.
Yeah, Microsoft
Sunday
and Microsoft Sunday night, and then we had
I think it was Bethesda after them, right?
God,
yeah, but then Bethesda late.
That's right.
Late Sunday. And
then Monday we had Sony and Ubisoft, and then Tuesday began the expo. It's just weird to see like.
Well, and then Tuesday morning was Nintendo.
Yeah, that's right. Tuesday, yeah. Nintendo's the only one that was officially during E3, and they weren't even on at E3. They just kind of cut to the treehouse every so often. Like they do the direct thing, and they have like just booths and stuff like that. It's
think Nintendo cares about your press conference?
No, they don't give a. They should. You know, that is not one that it should have been. And it was just such a weird thing of just like how much that coverage was basically just. You know, all these sort of things before. Like that was probably that was both, I think, the blessing and the curse because we got all of our news out of the way. So I figure kind of while we talk about this, just we're trying to go around there. I'm actually going to ask everyone sort of a point blank question, and I'll start with you, Rick. And I realize that this is sort of an interesting question to ask, but what has been your favorite thing so far of E3? Or what has been like the announcement that came out that you saw and that you're hyper excited for?
I think let me kind of give a background. I watched all the press conferences and all that stuff, and the main thing I looked at as far as excitement was things I was familiar with, and then things that I could do with my girlfriend as far as like play video games and stuff like that. The big kind of pop that we got was the Life is Strange prequel, and then doing a little bit more research and then realizing that this isn't the prequel that everyone wants because I
think it's going to be fun.
Ashley,
for those who don't know what we're talking about, Life is Strange Before the Storm, where basically it's taking up Chloe's life. Chloe meeting Rachel and all that stuff. If you're familiar with Life Strange, you kind of know that sort of stuff. The big kicker is because right now, for those who have no idea about the world of video games, not just simply video games, but like the actual inner workings of the business side of things, right now, SAG voice actors are currently on strike. And they're all trying to work out those deals, and the contracts weren't done in time. And so Ashley Birch, who is part of SAG, cannot legally voice act on the game. However, she is writing it. She is working as a consultant, if you will, for
I
her.
was gonna say, yeah. Consultant is the correct term.
If it wasn't for the fact that, like, because they posted a video on Square's the Square site or Don't Nod.
Their own. I mean, the Life is Strange
right,
YouTube
and
page,
the guys who are doing it seem like they give a crap. And they're aware of everything. Because again, I think the hard part right now is with that game. I'm excited for it. I'm okay without having the voice actor be the same, because there's a lot of times when we think a voice actor did something when they didn't. Like a good voice actor can do a sound alike pretty easily, and does it more often than not. Especially when it comes to video games, because let me tell you, it's kind of hard to get Robert Downey Jr. to do anything under a cool $20 million. And that's in terms of that. And there's plenty of Iron Man games where there's a guy that sounds kind of like Robert Downey Jr.
Well, and that's how Back to the Future, the Telltale game works.
AJ LaCasio, who I've learned recently is friends with the guys at Funhouse, to the point where he was on they do this thing during their drunk streams called Talking Stockings, where they literally talk about the Silk Stockings, a stupid USA show that happened years ago as a joke. As a joke, they had the guy, basically AJ is one of their friends, dressed up like freaking what's that, Jack Sparrow, and came up on there as Jack Sparrow. It's hilarious when you realize, oh shit, it's AJ LaCasio doing Jack Sparrow. It's just super funny. But the point being, when I looked into that, I was like, if it wasn't for the fact, like, the video side and kind of seeing that team sort of talk about that even in a pre-production, I'm like, okay, I think they're going to do fine. It's hard because Life is Strange is a weird game in its own right, because it talks about, it's the Midwest, but it's done through the it's done through the view of like modern French audience, because there's weird things where you hear the commentary where they talk about where at one point they were going to have Max and I forgot who the kid that had a crush on Max hard. Oh, what was his name?
The dude. Yeah. I know
there's a moment where
the guy that got beat up.
So there's a moment they're going to do right when they saw each other where he was about to hug her. But it wasn't so much a hug. It was originally they had actually did the whole in French culture, you do the whole kiss on the side kind of cheek, and it's totally normal. But it's a bit weird for Americans to have that. It's not an American thing, and so they did the whole fake hug thing because they just were like, oh, that's right, that's not an American thing, and they had programmed that originally with this sort of French belief, which is kind of an interesting idea. But that all being said and put together and sort of added up. And looking at this new team, I think it's good that they're kind of taking a prequel, because you don't have to worry about a lot of the mechanic side of Life is Strange. Like, you don't have to worry about the rewind. You don't have to worry about having that stuff. You can just sort of almost approach again that coming of age story from Chloe's perspective, because we got that from Max's perspective when we did the whole Life is Strange and everything else that worked with that. But having it within that moment should be interesting. All right, Drew, what about you? What has been your highlight so far of E3?
To me, the thing that got the biggest pop out of me, the biggest, because to me, the thing I'm probably most excited about is Super Mario Odyssey, but that was a known quantity. I knew I was going to be over the moon for that.
Right.
The thing that I didn't know I was going to be over the moon for and can't wait for now is the fact that, Beyond Good and Evil 2 looks like an actual game that will come out in an actual
that was a total surprise. Because there had been leaks, there had been rumors, there had been the concept of maybe it's going to happen, and then they showed the trailer, and it's just holy crap.
Yeah, they showed last year I think it was, they showed like the talking pigman snout, right?
Right.
And like I was like, oh, they're gonna show more stuff, and then they immediately like cut to something else, and I was like, well, okay, Ubisoft, like, thanks, guys, like, just the biggest giant cock tease in the world or whatever, but like, fucking, they actually came out with something that was like, oh, this is gonna be weird, and it's gonna be cool, and there's gonna be like, weird voodoo stuff, and
it looks interesting. I hope it does well, because it's one of those things where it could go either way in the grand scheme of things. I think it's going to be fine, but I'm definitely excited for it. It's that one. It's definitely the one property that I am very, very much excited for how that will work out. Because
it's coming to PC.
I'm just glad it's coming. Period. Like PC or otherwise. I'm just glad it's finally happening, because it's been a long time coming, that game. For me, it's interesting because this has been a very interesting year in the stuff that's kind of excited me.
Nothing excited Roberto.
All
of it was old.
Ironically, the stuff that excited me was
real excited about Madden story mode.
Well, because actually, what's funny,
He's excited about.
If you say you're excited about Madden story mode, I quit.
I'm intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by Madden story mode. That I'm intrigued by. I'm intrigued that they have it, because I'm curious. Only because the way, like when that verbiage was like, we're going to make because I read a Polygon article on it, and it was the idea of like, we're going to make a film version of this. I'm like, all right. Well, but when I looked at who they had on the football movie, did you see who they had as voice actors?
No.
They had one of the ex Friday Night Lights guys on there. I was like, oh, okay. Well, at least you're getting the right kind of voice people for that.
If they do it like Friday Night Lights,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many things you could ape that could be interesting and be weird and strange and bizarro. I don't know how it's gonna work. I have no idea. But honestly, FIFA's story mode's done really, really well. And people seem to like it.
FIFA, which
I'm just saying. Again,
I'm not European enough to give a crap about FIFA.
No, actually, honestly, the thing. Trailer-wise, the game I'm actually I want to look more into and kind of understand more is the Evil Within 2. Did you see that trailer, by the way, Rick or Drew, for Evil Within 2?
You mean like Weird Yogurt World? Yes. I saw that.
I love that. Oh my god,
yeah.
With like
I like how I said Yogurt World, and exactly.
Well, because like it's it does everything I tend to love in a trailer. Like it does a cover of an old '80s song in a weird, creepy way. Which, by the way, I've learned who did that song, and it's like the commercial company called the Hit House, and it just surprisingly became this, like, everyone's like, who does the cover for this, and everyone's like hunting it down, and it's like they just did it for the commercial, and
it's just a group that does this sort of thing.
It worked. It worked so well. It was creepy. It was like, this looks kind of cool for a thematic, and then I started looking. Cause I never played the first one. I was like, oh, the guy that did it was Resident Evil. I was like, okay, that looks interesting, cool. But I mean, I think that the thing that it's hard for me to pick one, because there's been so many things I've liked, like Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle looks really, really fun, because it just looks like who would have thought, and Rick, who would have thought that they would have made a Mario Rabbids tactical game? Like, who would have thought that they would have aped XCOM?
Nintendo is really weird with their IP. I mean, this year they've loaned out, things that you're like, oh, there's no way they'll, let Skyrim have, Link stuff. And then here we are, you have that, and then you had
Hyrule Warriors, was
the crossover.
Was not
good one.
Them.
Yeah, exactly. They had that. They had the crossover with, Sonic for the Olympics games. So, like, it's definitely not out of their wheelhouse. I mean,
the weird thing to think about, though, is that, like, for so long, it felt like, to me at least, until like recently, until probably the past 3 years, that it was the exact opposite. Because I don't know if you heard about these games, but there were some games that were put out on a Philips game system that were not too well received.
Yeah.
That had Zelda in them. And it was like, after that, they kind of clamped down. But like now they're like, nah, we're just gonna have Ubisoft like make XCOM for Mario and give him a gun. Like,
when you're in third place, you tend to do weird things, and I mean,
I'm excited for the weirdness that they're doing. Like I'm excited for that idea of making a tactical game because it's interesting and intriguing. And I think that could work out really well on the Switch because you still have kind of a touchscreen on the Switch that you could potentially interact with if you needed to do it that way, if you wanted to. But even then, it seems intriguing and weird and strange and fun. Beyond
they have to do something.
That's true.
What's more, what's everyone's in shock about is that it wasn't leaked. Like I think we live in a world. Where things are a shock. Because like we didn't know about it before.
Right, we got him up. We would have known like last year, like this, or we would have known like a week ago.
The Mario and Rabbids thing, there was like a picture that got out, and like it was almost unanimously like, oh, that's BS. Somebody's trying to drum up a bunch of like E3 hype BS, and that's never gonna happen because why would Mario be with the Rabbids? This is stupid. And like I remember hearing a couple of different or no, there was one bombcast where like it had first dropped and then like all of a sudden it surfaced again, and like you very noticeably had Brad Shoemaker on the podcast, like who had been to the like pre-E3 thing, like not saying a goddamn word. And I was like, oh, like, this is going to be a weird year. It's going to be a real weird year.
Yeah, it was interesting. Bob Kelly in chat room says, how many drugs were the developers on for Super Mario Odyssey? That looks really fun, too. That looks intriguing as well, especially the idea of like the hat mechanic of like possessing other things to do other stuff and even have to use that to traverse the levels. Like that seems, again, interesting. It seems like a fun mechanic that could be cool to add to the 3D Mario thing.
And we can use that, like, I would like to use that to break down, like,
let's go for it.
Dichotomy of it, because, like, you have Microsoft, and we can get deeper into, like, the Microsoft weed later, and I actually, like, right before, as we were going live,
and feel free, Drew and Rick, to just bounce around, because the crazy thing about E3, and this is sort of why I made this, like, for those who are, kind of pull the curtain back a bit. I made a giant doc with all the things that happen in E3, and there's so much that happens in E3 that there's no way we're going to cover it within the hour. I kind of want to make sure that we just talked about the highlights or the things that we thought was really interesting, really intriguing, or just different and strange. And Nintendo brought different and strange.
Right, and that's the thing is like you had like the tweet I retweeted like made a good point is like Microsoft comes out and it's like it's the Xbox One X and it's a powerful console with like 8-core processor and 12 gigs of DDR4 RAM and blah, 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 blah. And then like Nintendo's like, hey, you throw your hat on a frog and then you become the frog.
You become Mario Dinosaur.
Like, I was like, everybody's like, I want to do that. And that's like, to me, the thing about gamers is like, if you want the like crazy graphical fidelity at a certain point, like you're going to spend the extra money, get the PC or whatever. Like Nintendo was like going out there like, nah, we got games, bruh.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Microsoft killed it when it came to their platform. That the Xbox One X, basically, for those who don't know, was formerly known as Project Scorpio. If they're going to come out swinging with like platform and power, if that's what they're going to roll with, like 4K and all the teraflops you could want. I mean, Forza looks beautiful.
Oh, Forza looks really good.
Yeah. If you want a game to demonstrate the power, you always just roll out Forza. Like I really, yeah.
I mean, it's been racing games for years, though, right? Like you think about the PlayStation 1, it was Ridge Racer. You think about the PlayStation 2, it was Gran Turismo. Like racing games are really good at that because, like, if you get the textures right on the car and on the road, like you're golden. Like,
no, for sure.
Forza Horizon 2 was the first game where I was like, there's a major difference in my 360 and an Xbox One. And that was the game that kind of pushed me over the edge of buying one. And yeah, you always just roll, the Motorsport or the Horizon, whatever. I mean, we're in an odd year, so that means it's Motorsport. Yeah, and it looks beautiful. The problem is that you not only have to convince consumers to buy a console, but you also have to convince them to buy a TV as well. It doesn't matter how much. I mean, there was a huge argument of, 500 is too much. And it's just like, no, it's not too much. It's just when you have to add in everything else to make that purchase worthwhile, then it's too much.
Yeah.
You're talking 500 for the console. You are talking like another 1,000 to 2,000 for, or if you go cheap, like a $750 for the TV if you don't have a 4K TV. And then you've got to think about like, okay,
sound system. You gotta make sure
push it, the sound system that's going to push it. Like, you have all these different factors that people don't think about. And yeah, 500 is a good chunk for the console, but like at a certain point, like when the 360 and the PlayStation 3 first came out, like you think about those systems, they were selling them at a loss because that was the way they were going to push the graphics forward. Now it's like they don't do that as much, right? So like, and I have to say this for my dude in the chat, but like I'm sitting here with a 1070 like staring me in the face, where like all those Xbox exclusives should be coming to, like most of them are going to be coming to the Windows Store or Steam, where it's like, you got to convince me, the guy who spent like $400 on a graphics card, to then buy your $500 box. Like, I don't know. Like, I'll just buy it on my computer and like you're still getting my money somehow. So whatever.
It's interesting because like, when during Microsoft's press conference, they basically said, and we're going to show you X, I think it was like 33 games or something, like trailer for 33 games. 42 and like
42 games.
And I think like 22
42
or something.
games, and 22 were exclusive to the console in some form.
Right. And I think that's where the big differentiator is console exclusivity, because ultimately from Microsoft's point of view, they don't care whether you're on PC or Xbox because you're on their platform. You have Windows 10. You're buying stuff from their store. They don't care. And in other words, oh, you want to buy that PC game as well? Oh, that's cool, but you got to buy it on our store. Oh, you want to play an Xbox as well? Cool, buy it on our store and you get it on both. And it's like that's appealing to a lot of people,
which is great.
Yeah, the Play Anywhere.
The smartest, the Play Anywhere and the thinking backward and thinking forward that Microsoft is doing is
that was the other one.
Amazing.
And like Rick, you had mentioned during kind of our sort of before we started recording, kind of like the thing that you were excited for was the backwards compatibility.
I'm
as weird as that sounds.
And everyone's just like, well, I don't know why everyone's excited about it, but it's just like it's great because no matter what I buy is going to work in the future. So
that's the really cool thing. That is the one thing that I appreciate with what they're doing is the idea that they're not looking like this in console generations anymore. They're looking at it through the lens of making this thing this sort of like almost like PC in a way, where things kind of get, but even PC doesn't really quite do that. I mean, it doesn't now, but didn't do it in the past. And
right, which is why like you have the weird DOS things, right?
Right.
Like
and I like the fact that Microsoft's like even saying, we're going to try our best to include everything that happened even before us. Like 360 makes sense, but even going back as far as the Xbox One, I mean, at the Xbox, like, Prime, the OG one, if you will, at the very least shows that they're committed to that concept. And that's really, really awesome.
Well, and it's just in my world, I want to purchase something and then be able to use it no matter what machine I get later down the road, or if I still have that same machine. I mean, you look at Apple, 10, 15 years ago, if you lost all of your music that you bought on iTunes, you had to bawl to customer service to get a relicense for your stuff. And
which
now,
is ridiculous if you think about it.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, because you purchased that stuff, you should be entitled to it. And for them to be like, this, once you purchase it, if disc or not, you have it.
Yeah, that
once
was
you
interesting.
lose-
I had no idea
yeah.
how they were doing it until you explained it to me. That you put your disc in and it downloads the game, and that sort of like it's sort of locks your account. Like that's really interesting and cool.
And that's the thing is, if you have it on a disc, it's locked to the disc. So you know you can't just be like, oh hey, you know I downloaded it. Here you go, Roberto. Get yourself a copy. You have to have the disc to use it. So I mean,
and even then they. You know, a lot because of the backwards compatibility side, because they're like Xbox 360 and OG Xbox stuff. It's not like you're going to risk new sales being lost. You know, a lot of these times the developers just pop it in there for $1.50 at the most.
Yeah, man.
You know?
I mean, when Call of Duty Black Ops went backwards compatibility, it jumped back into the top 10 video game sales. And this happened, you know, the beginning of this year, end of last year,
right?
Like
and
that.
you have to figure it's because some of those people like sold those copies and were like, oh well, now that I can play it on the box that I still have, like I'll go ahead and go back out and get it for like $10-$20 or whatever. Yeah. Like, which completely makes sense from a money making standpoint and is a good sign for consumers, which actually begs the question, like there wasn't really anything said in the Treehouse about how classic Nintendo stuff is going to work.
Yeah, there was no virtual console discussion, which was very interesting, because like they covered, you know, a Nintendo's game. When we mentioned Treehouse, for those who've never been part of it, it's basically Nintendo's Treehouse. They during their press conference during the Treehouse, and Reggie was like, "All right, you know, we said we're in the first hour, we're gonna give you guys a premiere, like exclusive. Here you go." And they drop out of nowhere. We'd heard rumors of them working on a Metroid game, and we'd got Metroid Prime 4 is in production in terms of how that is. But there was like a loose rumor like they're working on 2 Metroid games, and one's a 2D, one's like, okay, sure. And they drop it. It's like, oh, by the way, we're making a remake of the Game Boy Metroid game. And I was like, oh, interesting.
Which they didn't mention in their, you know, press conference video.
They did the Treehouse. They said like it's coming, and I'm just like, and it's coming very soon, and it's just like that's insane. And I'm looking forward. Well, because like I'm looking forward to playing that game again because I've not played Metroid 2 in a while. For those who have no idea what we're talking about, especially if you're part of the younger generation, at one point Metroid wasn't in this cool 3D version that you're used to. At one point, it was not only just 2D, but it's also on this weird gray kind of thing where you put these like strange square cartridges in called a Game Boy. It's basically the predecessor, the great grandfather, if you will, of the 3DS. I realize I'm like being this stupid person talking
about. Talking to kids, you should probably use the term iPhone.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably don't know what you're talking about.
It's like an iPhone except way underpowered. It has exact same processing power as that TI-86 you have. You know, that calculator you have to use in that one math class that you hate. Because they still use graphing calculators in those damn classes, I think. But
and it's gonna play Doom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically what it is. But that being said, like, you know, they started bringing new mechanics in the game. Like I've not played the game in a while, but I'm certain there wasn't grappling hooks in that game. There wasn't. You didn't have any of the really cool kind of, you know, you had some of the suit stuff, and you had a little bit of fun, you know, ball mechanics, but you didn't have a grappling hook. You probably did, you know, you might even have the dash. I don't know how far back they're doing it and how they're going to remake it, but I'm intrigued enough to say like that seems fun. That seems like a cool kind of thing.
It seems really cool, but at the same token, like the really funny thing to me is they showed actual gameplay for that. That's fine. Everybody's like, "Oh my god, Nintendo talked about a Pokemon RPG for the Switch, and they talked about Metroid Prime 4." And I was like, yeah, well, they talked about it. But they didn't show anything.
No.
Hey, by the way, we're going to make a Pokemon game for the Switch because we want to make money. Well, no, duh, Nintendo. Like,
they basically announced everything that they had to announce and had to talk about, because it's again, it's one of those things that when they did all this, you know, it's weird going like watching it, because like, and I think earlier in the chat room someone mentioned, I think it was Bob Callie, like that everything seemed really short, and it did feel a lot of the conferences were like cut down for time. Like it felt like they were all at like either like the shortest of all the conferences was 15 minutes, and the longest I think was maybe like an hour and a half, maybe 2 tops.
Hour 45 for Xbox, I think.
Yeah, I
think
think Microsoft had like the longest one,
Mhm.
and even a lot of them were less about like talking like stage like we're mentioning as I mentioned, and they were impressed by the fact that Bethesda's games are all coming out, but like yeah, they're all coming out because they're all damn trailers, and there was like this weird like come into our theater and then watch the movie on Bethesda Land. I'm like, well, cool, thank you, Bethesda Land.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, there was an awesome trailer for that, and actually my second favorite trailer beyond the Evil Within 2 was the Wolfenstein 2 trailer, because that was like dripping with Bethesda style of being this like, alternate history, version sort of thing, as the way Wolfenstein's done. And then having like these, like I almost felt like and Drew, because I remember you were talking about this earlier a little bit in our sort of pre-thing. It almost felt like an original Fallout trailer.
Yeah, a little bit.
And apparently, and by the way, I've heard apparently there on the E3 floor, they actually have that diner reproduced, complete with strawberry milkshakes.
Because why not? I mean,
I can't wait for Wolfenstein. Like, you guys need to go and play the New Order. Jimi Hendrix helps you fight Nazis. Like, what? Like, go.
No, yeah, it definitely seems fun, and there's a lot of those interesting stuff that came down the pipeline for E3 that made me excited. Okay, we've already talked about what we like, and I think it's time we look at the flip side of the coin. We look at the opposite side. Not that we hated, nothing that we were with that, but things that we disliked. And I'm going to start with Drew this time and ask you, what is V3 have you disliked? Not hate, not like burn through cross, but just like, you know what? I wish they could have done this better, or I didn't really quite understand what the hell this was all about.
Nothing at the Sony press conference was surprising or exciting to me at all.
For me, maybe it was Spider-Man only, but I'm with you there.
Spider-Man is cool, but at the same time, like, I'm worried about that game. Like,
really?
And I shouldn't be worried about that game. But it's still, there has been one good Spider-Man tie-in game. One.
and it wasn't even a tie-in. It wasn't even a tie-in.
Right. It was just it was a random ass Spider-Man game. Yeah. And they just got moving around the city, right? If it gets moving around the city, right, I'm super pumped. Like, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like you have Devolver Digital being Devolver Digital. You have like the Mario Rabbids and Beyond Good and Evil 2 in Ubisoft. Like, you have a Shadow of the Colossus remaster and Monster Hunter, a game I've never understood. Like,
I guess that's true. Yeah, because I think all the conferences minus Sony had like this like, crazy thing. Like even Microsoft at their end had Anthem, this sort of new IP by BioWare that were just like, what is this? We need more of that.
Right.
And from what I understand is Anthem is going to be on everything.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So,
but Microsoft got again, as weird as this all sounds, it's always about like who got the reveal, who got the notoriety for it, and Microsoft did. But yeah, Sony, I will agree with you. Like there's some things like I'm interested in, but not a whole lot on that end. All right,
yeah, like everything else had a pop, and Sony was just like, Spider-Man looks kind of cool.
And it does look cool. And I will. People are saying that they like the Neversoft Spider-Man game from back in the day, and I think that's what we're talking about. And again, it looks
right, exactly. That's the one.
The developers who are doing it are pretty solid and whatnot. But yeah. All right, Rick. What about you? What did you dislike, if anything?
I think Sony
as well.
They're very they're playing it safe. I think I was watching this thing of like, hey, if Xbox would have had the X at $499 or $399, they would have cut, Sony would have cut the price on the Pro by $50, and they would have, done a little bit more convincing of why, Sony's still good. They showed a whole bunch of games, and a lot of them only had 2018 years as their release. There was no game from besides, what was it? Destiny 2 and Call of Duty World War II,
Right.
that had a date on it. Yeah, it's just
and those were both known quantities anyways, right?
And it's almost assumed that they're coming, and I think it was just so. And then Sony, being so far ahead that they don't want to play well with others of when it comes to the Minecraft stuff of the cross-play, and then the Rocket League cross-play stuff. Here's the thing: when Nintendo is willing to cross-play with Xbox,
that's the weird one.
Things,
that's the weird part. Is that and for those
and to loan their IP to Ubisoft,
the kicker is, and I think the boys at I forget who's developing who develops Rocket League off the top of my head. Psyonix. I think the boys at Psyonix said we have everything in place. We just need Sony to sign off. Just to sign off on it. And it's wow, we're just waiting for, and you're absolutely right about Sony playing it safe because, we look at the numbers, they're on top in terms of sales between, Xbox and PS3. The joke is you buy an Xbox or a PlayStation and then a Switch or Switch and then one of them if you buy both of them kind of thing, because you don't need to buy both really. And right now Sony is on top because they have the Pro out. They have
better exclusives.
They have better exclusives too. So they have the ability to play it safe, whereas Microsoft's kind of behind the they've got to move forward quickly because they're not quite as powerful as they'd like to be right now in the cycle of things.
And you know what? The console war stuff is kind of stupid, just because it's just Microsoft. It's all they're in second place, but they have Minecraft, the biggest game in the world. So it's what? It's the I don't want to say this. I mean, it's the tallest midget theory of just yes, they're still in second place, but I mean there's
some interesting things coming out of Microsoft and Minecraft with their Bedrock stuff and how they're kind of doing crossplay and all that stuff. There's interesting things Minecraft in VR sounds interesting. Having it in 4K sounds interesting. It's not necessarily this oh my God, I never have I ever wanted to play Minecraft in 1080p. Forget that. It is time to go 4K. I want to be absorbed in the Mojang world. I've never thought of, as cool as it sounds, and it will be probably fun to play in VR. That to me has never been that. That's the selling point. That's not the thing.
With Minecraft, it's just a different animal. It's just it appeals to kids, and then it's one of those things that tricks kids into learning about things. If it's, program, whether they're doing programming for Minecraft stuff, or it's
the redstone wiring stuff has been there since almost the drop, and that's exactly it. And that's again goes back to the point of the great thing about Minecraft is the sort of community behind it, right? And it's the getting folks together. I mean, think about back in the day, there was that core group of kids, the Diamond Club kids, that were all way into Minecraft, way deep into that animal, and bringing those people together. And there's been a while where I have it on my PC, and I have friends who have it on the Xbox, and they keep saying we should play together, and there's no way that I'm gonna buy it on the Xbox. I don't even have my 360 plugged in at this point.
I mean, and even now, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to buy. It's not the Java version. It's the new version for Windows 10. That doesn't say that's bad or good. It's just that's what the Bedrock version is, where it's almost a recoding, a recompiling, if you will, almost.
But if you do have the early version, if you got in during before it was a full release, if you got in during the alpha beta stages of Minecraft, you can still go back and get you can still talk to their customer service, get your code for the Windows Store version, because they promise hey, we're going to give you all of the PC versions from now until forever if you help us with this beta. So they're still making good on that for people, which I think is really commendable.
Yeah, like I said, I'm interested in the things that excite me from Microsoft is the idea of crossplay, because that's been the dream, that's been the that's been the concept. That's been the thing that's like eluded us for so long and so many years. This idea of cross-play where we could play it all, where it didn't matter whether I was on PC, whether you were on Mac, whether anyone was on whatever thing, and we all could play together, and we all could have fun, and we all could do it.
Well, and that's the thing is, Microsoft is crossplay, and then Nintendo is fulfilling everyone's dream of, I want to play console games on the road. And what has PlayStation done for me lately? Like, in my kid dreams, nothing.
They didn't mention the Vita at all. I'd like to note.
That's a damn good point. There wasn't. I mean, the only things I will say, things that are coming down the pipeline that weren't announced there at the press conference. I don't think they were, but Undertale's coming to PS4 and PlayStation Vita. I think a couple other games are as well, but they didn't really talk about the Vita at all. It's such an interesting. It's so. There's always a joke of like who wins and who loses E3 in terms of press conferences, and in hindsight, I think, obviously we all collectively agree that Devolver Digital's was the best conference as a concept and as a short film. But if we talk about,
it wasn't the best if you're trying to decide who wins E3 by who got the pop for video games.
Right, exactly.
It's not Devolver Digital.
Right, exactly. That's exactly my exact point. You took the words right out of my mouth, Drew. It's not that. But if I were to say that, like, I'd almost want to say Microsoft won it just in terms of just kind of all the news they gave out and all the stuff that they showed. Because beyond them, like, Bethesda's cool. I'm glad games are coming out, but we didn't necessarily, we didn't need to all have, people didn't need to go to a theater and watch all that. Or even Sony's. The only ones I can think of is like, Nintendo already usually wins because they kind of understand that and they don't have to worry about it. But I'd almost say like Microsoft, I think, did it as best as you can for that kind of format. Because EA's was like a weird train wreck with like, as much love the Men in Blazers, I was glad they're doing the FIFA thing and they did a great job. But then they cut to like, random YouTube influencer and
that guy oh my God.
I didn't know the guy's name. I couldn't even tell you.
That guy that didn't know how to use a teleprompter. I felt so bad for that dude because that dude seemed like just a dude and he seemed like he was put up there because, hey, let's get a YouTube influencer. And the guy was like, yeah, no, I'll go for EA. And then like they just gave him like no prep, like just no. And just
You're gonna say something, Rick?
I guess I'm not even sure what happened because that's the only press conference I didn't watch, and that's because I had to work and I just kind of with EA. I love EA just because of EA Access and stuff like that. But whenever I don't need to know their stuff when it comes to putting out a game because they're going to put it on EA Access.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Again, it's EA's out of all the press conferences, EA's felt like we did have a little bit of a hiccup in Skype land for those who are watching live and reading the recording version. Sorry about that. EA's the one that out of all the conferences was the most E3-esque conference, if that makes any sense. Like Microsoft's was all news, was all, Project Scorpio, all the stuff that happens with Scorpio, all the things that kind of go down, getting all that information out there because they needed to get it out there. Bethesda was all style. They did their kind of, Bethesda land that they already teased, and they showed all their trailers, stuff like that. It's their off year because they're probably working on things. Nintendo did their Direct, Sony did their press conference as well, and everyone did their thing. But I felt Microsoft was like the one that felt most like a news conference, like all right, we're gonna talk about games. Whereas EA's was like, we're gonna do the E3 thing where we have all this kind of acts and stuff like that. Like they did the whole, like it opened up. Rick, I'll explain to you. Tell me what sounds more like an EA. What sounds like more like an E3 typical press conference? A guy walking up on stage talking about their latest hardware, or starting off your press conference with a drum marching band dressed in NFL garb.
Oh, number one.
Interesting. I thought number.
Let's it was all Tom Brady and like just a drum line.
It was very strange in that I understood what they were doing and I got what they were trying to go for.
Like, why? Like, to me, like I facepalm that moment because I'm like, how dense do they have to be to not realize there's a lot of NFL fans who hate the Patriots with every fiber of their being, and it's just like Tom Brady uniforms because Tom Brady is the great quarterback. It's like, fuck, I don't want to see a bunch of Tom Brady jerseys. Fuck Tom Brady.
I love sports.
That's the thing, though, is they're still going to buy the game. I mean,
it's Madden. Like,
it's Madden. It doesn't matter who's on the cover at this point, and I think people are probably more excited that Tom's on the cover just for the chance for him to be Madden cursed. Surprisingly, so it's.
God, if he gets Madden cursed, that'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. See, like you just proved my point.
I'm not a Madden player. Like, I don't get football games.
I mean, either way, I think like, and again, and you know, really ultimately nobody wins, nobody loses E3, but I still love to have that idea of like who won, who lost, because it sort of boils down to what it is you tended to like and what you didn't like, and like. EA's, I think there might have been like a handful of things that look kind of interesting, but you know, if I had to say like out of all the press conferences beyond Devolver, because Devolver is in fact the ultimate conference and will always be the ultimate conference for all time.
Devolver was an acid trip disguised as an E3 press
That's kind
conference.
of the thing, and I think that's why I liked it as much as I did. But if I were to say like in terms of everything else, I was just like, man, like, because that was like a boring way to start off the thing, and then Microsoft comes in and kind of actually does interesting stuff. And like I said, Anthem as your pop moment at the end, like that looks like an interesting game. That looks like it could be something cool.
In EA's defense, though, I think that
it's their game. That's what's weird is that it's EA's game, and they said, oh, by the way, we're going to talk more about Anthem in Microsoft's conference, and that was the one that they gave them.
But the thing is, though,
that's the one that they gave. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I would, in defense of their conference, not necessarily EA as a publisher, because I don't think I need to defend Electronic Arts. They've been here forever. A Way Out was actually like, it didn't give me the biggest pop. It wasn't the Beyond Good and Evil 2. Oh my God, there's flying pigmen and flying cars and this looks awesome. But A Way Out seems like that game that's going to hit me like in a really profound way. It's like that. I love like stupid, like story-driven artsy games. Like, I will rave for an entire half an hour about Journey or Dear Esther or whatever. So, like, A Way Out seems really cool to me, and I want that game real bad.
Oh, yeah, that looks really cool.
And it was on their conference, but that's the only thing that was, like, super memorable of their conference.
Yeah.
A conference that Battlefront 2 in it.
That's the thing. We saw Battlefront 2 footage, and the big thing for that game, Rick, for Battlefront 2, do you want to know what the big thing is?
Oh, that they're not charging DLC and that they're doing a story mode.
Yeah, that's it. That was what their whole thing was that they're. Oh, by the way, they opened up and I know you didn't see this, but they opened up with a tweet from who's the actor that plays.
John McGinn.
Yeah, with like, hey EA, it'd be really cool if we had a story mode in the game, and then everyone sort of responded like, we heard your complaints, we're gonna put story mode in. I'm like,
yeah,
like, okay, cool. I'm glad you learned.
Moment, like, hey guys, we messed up. Like, it's a Star Wars game and there's no actual story. We get it. Our bad. Like,
well, and to kind of defend EA, a lot of that was Disney and the licensing. It's like, here's what you got. You can't cross trilogy. You can't do any fantasy booking stuff. Players can't do any fantasy booking stuff. You gotta stick original trilogy. That's it. And then you get one DLC pack.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, okay. I guess story mode, we're not going to waste time on it. And then, when that huge uproar happened, story mode happened. And then, additionally, what's huge is that they're not doing DLC. They're not going to charge for DLC for that first year, which is kind of mind-blowing for EA. But it's also a testament of how strong the Star Wars franchise is.
I think they're banking on. I think they're going to bank on not like. I think the way to go forward, especially for a multiplayer game like Battlefront, like Call of Duty, any of these ones, I think the way that you do the DLC is that you don't charge for maps. You maps kind of come built in or that you get for free. You charge for aesthetics. You charge for maybe a character or two. I mean, it's going to be hard because like that, Star Wars. There's just so much that you could just mine for money, and EA just loves mining for money, and that is just rifled with like, oh, we could say, yeah, you want to have Kylo Ren, cool. That's gonna cost you, like there's just so.
Oh, they're gonna do the shit out of that. They're gonna League of Legends the hell out of like those hero characters. You're gonna get like maybe 4, like for sure.
What's gonna happen is they're gonna do loot packs or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
Because that's a new thing. I mean, when every generation has a new thing that everyone exploits. I mean, last generation was DLC, and then it turned into season pass, and then now this generation it's loot packs, but giving everything else for free. I mean, that's why Grand Theft Auto 5 is, constantly in the top 10 of sales, is because they continuously add new things to online, and it's not because they want to, it's because people are buying those shark cards, to fund more content of that stuff. So it's
right, and that online has been such a good moneymaker for them at this point. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if really we don't see an actual full GTA.
Yeah.
For like,
oh no,
not another like half decade, if maybe ever. Like,
either way, I definitely will say this about it because we're almost out of time. We've hit the hour mark here.
I will go to that.
It's okay. We'll talk more. We'll talk more in the post. We'll do more in the post because we've got E3 is such a big thing that we almost get. It's. I will say this: out of all the when E3 began this year, I was kind of like, a little bit lulled. I'm definitely a lot more hype for the coming year of gaming than I was going into E3. Like there was just some really really cool. Really cool stuff kind of going down, and there's a whole lot of stuff coming down the pipeline that's just interesting and intriguing from a lot of different places. But I'm way more excited for stuff, and I need to buy a Switch yesterday. That's what I've learned from E3 is I just need to buy a Switch and buckle down. I
thought you had a Switch.
I don't have a Switch. I don't have. I'm broke. I'm broke. I'm saving money for
I got my Switch by pure luck, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. Again, either way,
I called Walmart that morning.
Say, yeah, explain the.
Yeah, it's getting that damn thing and stuff like that. But there's some great, but it's interesting. It's definitely been I think a lot more of a surprising E3 than I was expecting it to be. In just how games were announced and what games got announced. And it's funny because you got to see, throughout the whole conferences, the entire style of how people approach that stuff. And everything else like that. Drew, Rick, always a pleasure to have you both on the show. Drew, where can people find you when they go on the internet? How can they look more for Drew if they want to hear more from Drew?
If you want to hear more of my personal ramblings, you can find me at xdrews4x on Twitter. If you want to hear pointed ramblings with me and 3 other idiots about music, you can go to recordbreakerspodcast.com or at 4 Record Breakers on Twitter. It is a music podcast I do with 3 other dudes, sometimes guests, that will go through and we will pick an album a week. You listen to the album to the week prior before we record the show. We record the show about our thoughts on the album. It's like a little book club, but with music.
For sure. What about you, Rick? Where can people find you? Because I know you're doing a whole lot of stuff these days.
Well, you can find me at Rick Foster. That's the main place. You can also check my YouTube page, youtube.com/Rick Foster. I kind of have some stuff that I was doing for school. One of which is called Dashing for Redemption, which is kind of a little short thing that was goofy, and it was fun, and people actually kind of enjoyed it. So, can't complain there.
Aren't you doing a podcast these days as well? Don't you do something
yes.
on something?
Well, specifically when it comes to Better Call Saul, if you like Better Call Saul, tune in. Well, that's the thing, is I haven't been on it in a really long time just because of school stuff. But Jackie Hearn does a podcast called Lawyer Up, and it is really great, and you should all listen to it. And I am hopefully, when I finish up with school stuff, I will go on there as soon as possible and apologize to Jackie Hearn profusely on school stuff.
It's okay. Of course, you can find me. I'm at Vincent404. They're the Twitters and the chat rooms everywhere else on the planet. Of course, if you want to catch previous episodes of this podcast, you can go to our website, CosmicRadio.TV/8BitLife. There you find links to show notes, previous episodes, our Twitter account for the show, which is at 8BitLife Podcast. And of course, if you're watching on Twitch, hit that big old follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that big old subscribe button. If you're watching on Facebook, hit that like button wherever it is on the post for the page. And if you want to help this podcast become bigger, better, and more awesomer, head over to patreon.com/8BitLife. So that's it for today. So until next time, talk to another geek, or in this case, a pair of geeks, about something completely and utterly random. Bye, people.